Hey, we heard a lot about the West Indies, not fielding the best team possible. And I was thinking back to a couple of seasons ago, I saw young players on the rise, like Shim Hetmeyer. He's 27 now, hasn't played Test cricket for 4 years. Why can't they keep these boys playing Test cricket at what should be the peak time of their career, like late 20s to early 30s? I mean, it'd be a different world for them.
Oh, there's no doubt about that, Dermott. I mean, they've got guys like Nicholas Pooran as well. I know you love your cricket, but they've got their most talented players are not playing international cricket because of how little they're getting paid for their national contracts. Basically, I mean, I think the top West Indian contract, and I might be a little bit out here, but I think the top West Indian international contract is probably somewhere around 150 to 200,000 US dollars. That's to play T20s, one days, and Test cricket for your country. And guys like Hetmeyer and Pooran are playing, in South Africa at the moment or in the UAE at the moment, probably making 4 or 5 times that for a 2-month tournament to play T20 domestic cricket, franchise cricket. So. I've said for years that with countries like the West Indies and, even Sri Lanka and New Zealand even to that matter, the ICC have to really take control and somehow have, almost like a blanket policy, if you like, on match payments or minimum contracts for international players. Otherwise, the international game is going to get diluted more and more every year, and we're going to have countries falling, off from the top of the Test charts where the West Indies were 20 or 30 years ago to now not even being good enough to qualify for a men's World Cup 50 over tournament. So, their decline has been quite dramatic, and I can't see how it's going to improve. I mean, you saw it last week, right? Like they're talking up about that this is some of their best young talent they've got in the country, and a Test match in Adelaide last 7 sessions. So it's definitely going to be a long way back for the West Indies.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be that no matter where you came from, West Indies were your second favourite team because they were so flamboyant to watch them. Whether you love fast bowling, you got to see the world's best fast bowlers, or you got to see the likes of Viv Richards, Richie Richardson, those types of blokes. Yeah, and it seems to be that you're never going to get a group of that talent again all at once again, but you're going to get some talented players coming through. I mean, Andre Russell, that type of player, if you get them all at the one time, they're going to be a formidable team. But, yeah, I agree with you. The ICC needs to step in some way, but then it has to work out where the money is derived from, how they generate that money. But let's move on to the Test cricket. What are you seeing happening this Thursday in the game upcoming Test?
Well, it could very much be much of the same, unfortunately, from what we saw in Adelaide. I mean, I think the wicket that we saw in Adelaide, provided quite a bit for the fast bowlers. It has to be said there was quite a bit of seam movement in that surface down there, and we go up to Brisbane in a pink ball night game. You'd expect there to be similar sort of movement up there as well. So it's going to take a huge turnaround and a swing in form from that West Indian team to make it anything other than probably what we saw in Adelaide. To be totally honest, I mean the talent and the skill level is just not quite there yet.
Is the track fast? Is it going to be fast and sharp?
It normally is. Normally, in Brisbane, it normally starts a little bit slow up there, just because they normally leave a little bit of moisture in it at the start of the game, and the grass is normally, quite thick and quite long day one, and as the game goes on up in Brisbane, it tends to harden up a little bit and get a bit faster and bouncier. So that you think that's the way to be. But the other thing in Brisbane as well, if you do get some overheat conditions and you're batting under lights there against that pink ball, it won't be easy for anyone, let alone not just the West Indian guys, but we saw even the Australian batters, with the exception of Travis Head, mostly struggled in Adelaide as well. So it won't be easy batting conditions. But hopefully the West Indies can find a way to be a bit more competitive than they were last week.
Now we were talking about it earlier. We've got the text machines run off its face. I'm not comfortable with seeing an opening bat fidget and jump around the crease and do all those things that Steve Smith does. He's one of the greatest batsmen we've ever laid eyes on. I just struggle to see an opener doing that, and I would hate to see an opener doing that against the English, the New Zealand or the Indian teams.
Yeah, look, I was as surprised as anybody, really. When that story first broke, that he put his hand up and said that he was willing to do it. As soon as I heard that, I thought, well, that's definitely the way they're going to go then, because you could see how desperate they were to get Cameron Green back into the side. Which, by the way, I don't necessarily agree with either. I was pretty open, saying that I felt they had to pick the most in-form and highest run-scoring opening batsman from domestic cricket, and at the time that was Cameron Bancroft. I thought he deserved to get picked on the work that he's done over the last couple of years. I think he's averaged over 50 the last couple of years in first-class cricket, and I just think it sends a lot of bad messages, I believe, to the
Can I
opening
interject
batsmen
there,
around the
Punter? Can I interject there on Cameron Bancroft? There is a thought that he could be like a Graham Hick. He will belt up the first-class bowlers, but will he be a long-term success? And he might have had enough opportunity in the past to show that. There is that way of thinking. How do you view that?
Look, I think there can always be that way of thinking about anyone until you give them a bit of exposure and see what they're actually going to be like. Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess the way you can look at it, and with you and Kane there, you can look at it with AFL footballers as well, right? Like a lot of those, you always talk about 30 to 50 games into these guys before you sort of start to see them develop into the players that they can be. Well, it's got to be the same. It's got to be the same with cricket as well. Bancroft was picked reasonably young, didn't have a lot of first-class cricket under his belt, and the only way you get better is by playing against the best for long periods of time. I mean, let's go back to Steve Smith, go back to Khawaja, go back to Travis Head. Where have these guys developed into really good international players after they've been around the setup for a while and learned what they need to do to be successful at international level? So, I mean, there's no doubt that Cameron Green is a highly talented player, but his first class record's only the same as Bancroft's, and his Test record is average about 30 with the bat. So we haven't seen the best of him yet either, but they're pinning their beliefs and trust in him that he will turn into a generational player that we all think he might.
What are you seeing with him, punter Cam Green? We discuss him a lot. I mean, the plaudits and the praise on him has been like what I've called him the most overhyped Australian athlete currently. Now that may be a big statement, and a lot of people disagree with that. But technically, you're as good as anyone. What are you seeing with his game, and are there any concerns, or are you confident he'll get there in time?
Yeah, look, I haven't seen as much. I've seen obviously the Test international cricket he's played. I've seen a bit of that. I've seen a bit of his one-day stuff for Australia. I've seen a bit of him in the IPL. I mean, I think he's still got a long way to go with his batting. I think his bowling in Test cricket, I think, has been pretty good. To bowl the sort of pace that he bowls from the height that he does, and then to be able to move the ball like he does, he's pretty impressive with the ball. But I think technically, batting-wise, it doesn't look to me yet like he's sort of worked out what the right rhythm and tempo is as far as his Test batting is concerned. And like we were talking about Bancroft, the only way that's going to change is by giving him the exposure and getting him out there and making him learn in the heat of battle. So he's still definitely a work in progress. The thing, he's quite a nervous young bloke as well, from all accounts. So, and I reckon you can see that by the way that he bats. It seems to be a very nervy sort of defensive-minded approach to his batting. But the more he plays, hopefully he can change that and free up his mind a little bit, and he can dominate Test cricket the way that he's dominated first-class cricket for the last few years for Western Australia.
Enjoyed your coverage of the game last night. Brisbane Heat getting it done by 54 runs against the Strikers, and in particular the innings from Josh Brown. You were speaking about what an innings like that can do to someone's career in modern cricket with T20 and how that can launch you into stardom. I mean, what can an innings like that do for Josh Brown?
He's probably taken phone calls last night and this morning from most domestic comps around the world, I'd imagine. I mean, there's a couple. I mean, the UAE comp, the ILT20 is happening now over in Abu Dhabi, and I think that competition alone can have, I think it's 9 overseas players in each team. It only takes a couple of breakout performances like that. Jake Fraser-McGurk's over there playing in that competition at the moment, in between the end of the Big Bash and when Australian Sheffield Shield cricket starts again. So there are huge opportunities now. There's MLC, that Major League Cricket in America, that's really going to take off the next couple of years. That sort of runs through July, which is obviously the off season for Australian players. So there are huge opportunities, and I've seen it happen a lot in the past, where having coached in the IPL for a number of years now, that if anyone has a couple of standout performances, it doesn't matter if they've been heard of before, if they're star players or youngsters on the rise. If they have a couple of really good performances just before that IPL auction, then their value normally goes through the roof, and that could easily happen with Josh Brown. I know it's pretty much a one-off, that innings he played last night, but you can that ball striking talent is there, and if he can work out the right way to go about his T20 cricket from here on with the power that he's got, then he could easily find himself in a few other franchises around the world.
Yeah, so I just watched the highlight package of it this morning, and it just made me think of the decision to let Chris Lynn go. Would they have seen this in him, saying, well, we've got another bloke who can strike just as well, and all of us would have said, oh, that's rubbish. No one strikes it as well as Chris Lynn in the domestic competition of the BBL, but this bloke did last night.
Yeah, he's apparently done it around Brisbane grade cricket for the last few years, which is why he sort of popped up on the BBL radar last year. He's still very raw, and I sort of said it last night as well. There's still a hint of that, that club cricketer about him, if you like, the way he goes about his cricket, even his running between the wickets and the way he sort of, blind turned a few times last night, sort of turned the wrong way. Like that, all that sort of stuff is sort of traits of the weekend club cricketer, but there's no doubting his ball striking ability. I mean, that last night, some of the six hitting last night, it's pretty effortless power with him. He's a big, strong guy, but to be able to hit the ball pretty much about 270 degrees around the ground. If you look at it yesterday, like he hit a lot of off the spinners behind square leg side. He hit the fast bowlers straight down the ground and over extra cover. It was very impressive. And if the Brisbane Heat can get him to do that again in the final tomorrow, then they'll be hard to beat once again.
Yeah, that strike over extra cover, over long off is just extraordinary. And Punter, some of us have to just blind turn with the bat in the right hand because it's our quickest leg. We just put the head down and go because we know we have to get there.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was funny with him last night because I don't know how closely you watched it, but there was one instance last night where he was running down the wicket with his bat in his left hand because the ball had gone on the offside. But when he got to the crease, he changed over into his right hand and turned his back to where the ball was coming from and got in and out. So, and actually, and to be honest, to be fair as well, he actually didn't field in the fielding innings because he was carrying a bit of a sore hip. So he might have been turning on his good hip and not his bad one.
Ricky Ponting is with us from Ponting Wines, pontingwines.com.au. Now, Ricky, before we let you go, I had a bit of a crack at you after a game between the Thunder and the Scorchers where you called the pitch substandard. I said that batsmen need to harden up a little bit and not be as precious because I like a wicket that does a bit and gives the bowlers some love. Was I off the mark? And what is your ideal pitch?
No, I don't mind seeing that at all because quite often, Kane, those sort of wickets lead to the best games a lot of the time. Some of the lower scoring one-dayers or T20s can quite often be the most entertaining to watch. But the point I was making about that one that day is as long as the home team knows the way that the wicket is going to play, then it's okay. Because you think about the way you put your squad together, the player draft that you enter into, you're quite often picking players on what you think your home conditions are going to be like. And then when you turn up one week and you've got a really good flat wicket that doesn't spin and you rock up on the same pitch only a few days later and it's turning square, then and the home team doesn't know the way it's going to play, then that's what makes it difficult. And it can be, like I was saying on air that night, that can be a real turn-off for young players. The Sydney Thunder, and one of the other points I was trying to make that night, the Sydney Thunder has been a sort of a struggling BBL team for a few years now, and if they produce wickets like that more often than not, then you're going to see a lot of young Australian batsmen that want to go to venues and score big runs. They're going to turn away the opportunity to go and play there. So, as I said, I'm sure they didn't mean to prepare it that way, and groundsmen can't get it right all the time. But when you can see, and nothing against Ashton Agar, but when Ashton Agar can bowl 4 others for 6 or whatever he bowled that day, that says to me that the wicket probably wasn't up to scratch.